Okay, this is Tunnel Through the Air, part 3, the final part in this 3-part 2018 forecast. So in the first and the second parts we covered the 90-year Saturn-Uranus synodic cycle. The second part we looked at the 29.5-year Saturn return cycle back to its ruling house. So in part 3 we're going to look at the smaller cycles, which involves the moon cycle, and we're going to look at critical degrees that have intensified effects. In other words, what I mean by that is when a planet is at a certain degree in a zodiac or a house sign in relation to cycles, it has a more intensified trigger effect. And we're also going to look at the Mercury cycle in relation to the larger cycles, as I have to look at the smaller planets and the cycles of the smaller planets, as they are usually the trigger point for what's to come. So first of all, I'm on the Dow 30 monthly chart, and we're going to look at the 90 lutation moon cycle, which 90 lutations equates to 7.5 years. Now, both Gann and Jensen discovered that the 7.5 year, or the 90 lutations in the moon cycle, would mark market top to market top. So if we have a look at the Dow 30 from the high, the .com high before it burst of January 2000 to October 2007, it was almost 7.5 years. So as we can see there, the 90 lutations, which equals 7.5 years from high to high, works out. If we take that measurement again from the high of 2007, move it forward, we almost get exact repeating cycle from the high of 2015 before we had the correction. So that brings us to, well, what has happened here? When looking at these minor cycles, we have to determine where the major cycles are, or where they're nearing in their cycle, as far as terms of what dictates the smaller cycles. So as discussed in part 1 and 2, we know that the 90-year synodic cycle comes to an end in 2018. So does the Saturn return cycle in 2018. Comes to a return, and it terminates in 2018. When a market is trending higher, so a trine, which is positive, so from low to high points, in lutations as follows, so lunar cycles as follows. We have 60 lutations, which is 5 years, which is 60 degrees is a positive trine. 30 years, which is 30 degrees is positive, is 2 years and 6 months, or 15 degrees, which is 1 year and 3 months. So if we go from that corrective low of February 2016, we get a ruler. In time from that low of February 2016, we get a termination point around September of 2018. Now, from this top, I have put in certain important Gann angles. One 1 by 8, which is the bottom one. So if we look at the 1 by 8 angle, we can see from the high, see how this 1 by 8 angle from the high of the .com and measured in the 90 lutations, the price of the Dow Jones hits exactly at the 7.5 years and the top of that 1 by 8. So if you knew this in advance and understood the moon cycles, lutations, understood this, you knew how to measure this, and you knew that the market was ahead in time was going to terminate at that 1.8 angle. And if we go further ahead in time, we can see, because as we know with Gann angles, exactly you view them as exactly the same as trend lines. If the price is below, it acts as resistance, which it did there, and we measured it in time and it proved resistance. So, but then as we move forward ahead in time, through January 2014, once it broke that 1 by 8 Gann angle, that timing angle, which coincides, once it broke above it, once was resistance, now becomes support. And we can see that when we had the correction of late 2015 through 2016, once it closed above it, this current bull market was not done by a long shot, regardless of central bank intervening or not. That's just what it was telling me. So as we can see, since Trump's election, we've had the big impulse move, and then we've hit the 1 by 4 Gann angle, timing angle there, and see how it didn't act as resistance whatsoever, because we have the final secular lunar 30-year lunar cycle in play here. So 30 lutation cycle, which equals 2 years and 6 months. So it was never going to terminate there. So the question is, given that we have to combine the smaller cycle, lutation cycle, the final lutation cycles, into the bigger 90-year synodic cycle and the 30-year Saturn return cycle, we have the 1.3, if I scroll out there, the 1.3, this dotted line Gann angle, whereas we measure the cycle in a unit of over time, geometrically on a chart. And we know we have a possible termination date of September, October of 2018, which could possibly give us a target of 26,000 on the Dow, which could possibly mark the top of this market before it crashes. So here we have the lutation, the lunar cycle in play here. That's still, the analysis of this still needs to play out in conjunction with the bigger cycles. Now, in saying that, I highly doubt that when we transit into 2018, because we have the bigger cycles, the Saturn return cycle starting to have a heavy influence on things, I'm not expecting the market just to continue to go straight up. I think early 2018, which I'll cover shortly, I think we're going to see a drop and then back up again, and final attempt at a high before later in the year in the big crash. And the reason why I'm forecasting that is, if we go back to the wheel, let's look at, just get rid of the sun for a second. we have, so we've already covered and discussed the 90, the 30-year cycle. Now, the Mercury cycle is very important because Mercury cycles also tie in with reverse corrections in markets, market tops, and trend reversals in markets. Now, here with the Mercury cycle, we'll look at some dates, I believe, in early January of around January 19th, 2018, when Mercury is in the same house as Saturn. And Mercury is at critical degrees in Capricorn, as well as Saturn critical degrees, and they're almost still pretty conjunct, which will have an intensify effect. So I'm forecasting that I don't think that the markets will crash early in the year, but I think we're going to get some corrective movement down while we have this influence of Mercury around Saturn. And then if we go forward in time, once Mercury moves out of the house Saturn is in, we're probably going to see markets stabilize, and then I think towards the middle part of the year, we're going to, around May, when Mercury conjuncts with Uranus, we're going to get some more market volatility there. And then once later in the year, towards the back end of 2018, October, once that final 2.6 year lutation cycle is complete, around October, and Saturn, Uranus are still squared, and the 90-year synodic cycle, I think we're going to see the market move into a crash scenario, and a secular bear market will ultimately begin late 2018 and will last through to 2020 and possibly 21, even longer. So that concludes this three-part analysis of my Tunnel Through the Air 2018. So recap once again, the dates I'm looking at is around January 19th for a correction, and then the markets to stabilize through a period afterwards. Then we might get some pickup in volatility in May, and then we're going to see heightened increased volatility and most likely a big market crash later in the year, around September, October onwards, and which will begin the secular bear market, which ends the 90-year synodic Saturn-Uranus cycle and coincides with the Saturn return cycle. So I hope you found that informative, and let's see what happens.